to avoid them by restricting openness.
I'm trying to get a sense from you. You're still so much in touch with the conservative base through the Manning Centre and so on. Do you get the sense that the base is content?
Well, I think they're content on some issues. I think they feel that the government's on the right track with respect to the economy, which according to the polls is the #1 issue in all parts of the country and virtually with every interest group. But I do think they have worries on the democratic front. I think a lot of the younger people would like to see a more positive, proactive approach on the environmental front. So there's work to be done on other areas, even though those areas may not be the #1 issue that the pollsters draw attention to.
Have you watched House of Cards?
For those of us climbing to the top of the food chain, there can be no mercy.
The cynicism and the tricks people play, I mean, it may make for good fictional television, but there's enough cynicism and mistrust of these institutions as it is without adding to it. And the Canadian system is significantly different than the American one, too.
It's also, the advertising that we see, the way they go after each other these days. It's
well, and that's a worrisome thing. I've had these folks that sell the negative advertising thing, and everybody says they don't like it, and I don't like it, but they will come into you and say, the only thing is, it works.
Justin Trudeau, he's in way over his head.
So do you teach that? Do you have to teach?
No, we try to teach how do you cope with it.
But the party that came after you was probably the most successful in those kinds of ads.
Well, they learned it all from the Liberals before. I mean, that's the trouble with it. It's like tribal warfare. This tribe does it to that tribe, and that tribe does it back.
Does it bother you?
Well, yeah, because it is creating this cynicism and disillusionment among the public that it's making it harder and harder to recruit candidates.
Well, now Justin Trudeau, he's way up in the polls. How do you explain that?
Well, but I think his challenge will be when he espouses those values. When Harper espouses them, he can at least point to a track record of doing it. When Justin points to it, it's all promises and what I would do, but it's not a track record. So I think there will be a debate, too, in this next election on and probably more among the media, on charisma versus substance.
Everyone say hi to Sophie.
What if you have substance but you don't have charisma? Can you make it politically? What if all you've got is charisma and no substance? Can you make it that way?
What are you suggesting?
Well, I think there's a lot more charisma on one side than the other and a lot more substance on the other. Of course, the challenge is to get maybe a mix of both.
When you were running for office, we used to hear a lot about how the West wants in.
People want a major constitutional change to strengthen regional representation in the Parliament.
Is the West in?
Yes, and I think almost more importantly that on May 2nd, 2011, the geopolitical foundations of the country shifted from the old Laurentian region of Ontario and Quebec as an alliance to a new alignment between Ontario and the West. And
so the balance of power shifted?
The balance of power shifted, yeah. And I don't see the Liberals and NDP responding to that yet. Both of them now are Quebec-based parties. NDP vacated the West just at the time the West was becoming this big player. And Reform filled that vacuum. So I think the new reality is this political alignment between Ontario and the West.
And now Quebec is talking about separation again, or one party is.
Well, we're saying that now we're going to have to cope with Eastern alienation, and I'm going to have to, maybe we can suggest a party that would campaign on the East once. But it is interesting, though, like I have raised this in the West, that there's this new alignment, and that we have to be conscious of everything east of the Ottawa River feeling more and more out of it. And it's interesting.
That's quite a change.
Well, it's interesting with Western audiences. Some people you might say will say, well, it's about time they felt what it's like to be out of your own country. But whenever someone expresses that in an audience, I say, but you remember what it was like for you. Do you want anybody else in this country to feel that way? I don't think so. And again, your public audience will say no. The West remembers what it's like to feel impotent within your own country politically, and most Westerners don't want that to be the experience of Atlantic Canada or Quebec or any other part of the country.
It's been 8 years of a Conservative government. Has Canada become more conservative?
Well, we do these national public opinion polls every year in which we try to ascertain what are the values and principles that Canadians hold to, and certainly on the economy, this idea that you got to balance your budgets, that you got to constrain your spending, that you should leave more money in the pockets of taxpayers to spend instead of putting it in the hands of bureaucrats or politicians. Certainly there's widespread